Welcome to the show. Uh-oh. I just realized that I have the wrong background up because this is not involving NDIA, the National Digital Inclusion Alliance. So I should make sure that there we go. That'll fix it. I'm running the show because Rye and Jordan are both on a break because I don't know. We follow appropriate procedure with giving people time off, and then we expect that they'll never use it, but then sometimes they do. But we're back with the usual crew, and because of the trying to keep it a little bit simple, I didn't bring in a special guest. But for those of you who only tune in for this special guest, we're going to bring Gigi Sohn back. Gigi was just down in San Antonio. I was down there with her yesterday. And while there, she had a mental lapse and said that she actually really enjoyed spending Friday afternoons with us and that we should invite her back. So I'm going to bring her back.
Does she maybe have an aneurysm or something? Or what?
Was she drinking? Yeah, was she drinking? What was happening during this statement?
Yeah.
I mean,
true, or is that something you heard?
She told me. Yeah.
Okay.
She actually told there was witnesses even. So so let me start the show. I'm Chris Mitchell with the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. We have in the upper right Travis Carter. Welcome back from USI Fiber in Minneapolis.
Good day, sir. Good day, sir. Someday I want to be so important that I have multiple shows I do like you. So
well, I can make that happen.
Oh shoot. No, I'm good. Thank you. I'm good.
We've got Kim McKinley from UTOPIA Fiber. Welcome.
Yep. Just came back from Miami last week or on Sunday night, so I'm refreshed, ready to go. Let's go, Chris.
Kim, you told me that you're going to be coming into town, and this is a time when I'm not, when I'm actually going to be in town now. So I'm assuming you're going to change your plans.
Probably, absolutely. Now that I know you're in town, I'm definitely not coming into town. So yeah, good to know that. Thanks, Chris.
Looking forward to seeing you in July, I hope. And then we got Doug Dawson from CCG Consulting, who's leaning into the mic. We're trying to really improve the levels to make sure everyone can hear what Doug has to say.
I'm not ready to talk yet because you'd never said connect this.
Oh, you know what?
You're
did.
Right. You did not. Yes.
Right. So
please.
This is your episode of Connect This, which is coming to you a little bit out of order. We were supposed to do it last week, but somebody, this guy, forgot to set up the calendar and make sure that we're all coming. So we got a week off, and now we're back, which is fine because we would have taken next week off anyway for the 4th of July, and we'll be back on a regular schedule. Today, we're going to talk ever so briefly about how we're not talking about Chevron deference until we can get Gigi Sohn on the show. But the Supreme Court changed some important things today for the Federal Communications Commission, among others. We're going to touch in on these pretty cool Texas library speed test map. We're going to talk about major metros and if they have plans for improving internet access. We're going to talk a bit about Starlink and the ozone layer, which will probably be largely uninformed by any kind of scientific background. But we are going to talk about something we actually know a bit about, which is Sony versus Cox, a decision that has a lot of concerns for all ISPs. Basically, if you connect people to the internet, this Sony versus Cox case should be a big concern of yours. We're going to talk about that briefly. Travis went to Kansas City for a peering event, and we're going to talk about that. And then Colorado has passed a couple of cool laws, and one in particular that is really interesting, forcing apartment building owners to open up to ISPs. So if there's time at the end, we're going to talk a little bit about some technical stuff, but it's a full agenda. Travis, you unmuted yourself. Were you going to jump in on something?
Oh, sorry. No, did I mute? I do want to throw out a shout out to Mr. Doug Dawson today. Pots and Pans today, spectacular.
So you gotta tell us what it was then.
It laid out a series of issues associated with actually building fiber networks. So I actually printed that one out so that I have it at my
I I sent a note to Jess and Jordan on my team who make these booklets. So like we did this event in San Antonio yesterday, and we make these custom booklets. This one's from a tribal broadband boot camp, but it has like a 4-page glossary and stuff at the end. It's got a bunch of places for people to take notes, and then a bunch of links to resources. And I sent a note to Jess and Jordan because Jess maintains our booklet that focuses on tribal issues, and Jordan maintains the one that's more focused on metropolitan issues. And I said, we got to add this blog post to it. And in my head, I thought we should just take the words from the blog post and then put them in and take credit for it. But we probably won't do that.
I don't care.
But we might add a few or adjust them. But Doug, I thought that was a really insightful look at all the different challenges that are present.
Well, we all think that all the regulations come from the FCC. Most of them come locally. Most regulations are local. There's a lot of them. So, yep.
But I just put a link
as Travis well knows. I mean, how many regulations do you have in Minneapolis, Travis?
It depends. Now, this year we hit one that is new, which is we were building near a bald eagle's nest, so we had to wait till July 1st. So that was a new one. Then we had an endangered lizard we ran into as well that we had to
What?
Why did you run into it? Why did you
we
run
didn't run
into
into it. There was just an area that was designated as that. But what I found interesting is you went through the whole exercise and it just required like 9 more signatures because it may or may not be there.
Right.
But let's not get away from pots and pans because I think Chris didn't read the article really close because the second sentence was the one I really picked up on quickly. Let me say it. The Ajit Pai FCC strove to eliminate most all broadband regulations that were not specifically mandated by Congress. I mean, it's on the wall now.
And let's be clear. Like he wanted to make it easier for T-Mobile to put a 50-foot monopole like in your front yard without any consent whatsoever or consideration of property damage or the nature of the community or stuff like that. So I will say that I agree with what Doug wrote, and I would not say it's unambiguously a good thing.
He has to argue with you, Travis. Just let it go.
Yeah, no. I just want to make sure that he saw the second sentence because I knew I was going to bring it up. So.
Yeah, no.
Mm-hmm.
I like how Travis forgets that I complain about all of the FCC people, and he feels like for some reason I feel like if you ask Travis, like, is there only one person that Chris has ever complained about? He would say it's Ajit Pai.
Well, as he drinks in that sweet 6 gigahertz spectrum, he's using it as house now. So.
Okay, so Travis, we were at the same conference with Ajit Pai not too long ago. Did you feel the vibe when you were in the same conference? Did you not know he was in Florida too?
Kim, we had this conversation. Me being next to you gave me so much street credit that show. I didn't need Pai that day. I had McKinley. So.
Oh, okay, just making sure. Okay, the show.
Yeah.
All right. So
just
back to the
regular. To be clear, there's never a day when I don't want pie. Just so we get.
So we have. I just saw this thing, and it's about halfway down in GovTech. Putting that link in the chat. And this is basically that Texas has a public map of their speed tests they've done for libraries around the state, and I just thought this was good. These are the sorts of things that I feel like we should have more of from government, where they try to just make things easier to find in comparisons and present data so people can see how their communities are doing and that sort of a thing. So for all I know that this is common and other states have done this, but I thought it was cool that Texas did this.
I've never seen it before, so I think it's unique. What's really good about it is, we all think free access in the libraries is great, but if they're stuck on a 1 gigabit connection and they got 400 patrons, it doesn't work very well. And so, seeing these speed tests are really important. So, that's how, I think that's one way for you to know your town's not up to snuff and you might want to do something about it. So I think it's great. Public information should just be given. So. Yep.
Right. And it's very low cost to do these kinds of tests. It's not like you need to have a team of people going out and doing stuff. So
no, the libraries did the test, I'm sure. So yeah,
right. But also I think, there's been programs, and I think, friend of the show, Chris Rizzo, had been involved with efforts to develop like a little box that libraries would just plug in and it'd all be automated. So they don't even have to like remember to do speed tests. It would just be being reported. Those sorts of things I think are really helpful.
Okay. Can I be the negative Nelly here?
Nope. Moving on to the next topic.
Okay. How do we know where the capacity of these speed tests are? Because I've seen these speed tests all over the place, and we don't know what who's running the speed test, where is it based out of, what is the capacity? Because I've seen them where people have 1 gig connections coming up at 300 megs, because depending on the speed test. So I like the idea, I just don't know if the concept works. And you said we weren't doing banners, and you just screwed me over with a banner that just came up, Chris.
No, so I can just click on comments to pop them up real easy. So that I can still do, as long as I can remember to highlight the person who's speaking, and occasionally I'll just sit here so I don't have to remember that. Kim, this is one of Travis's concerns also, is like whether or not the speed test is accurate. To some extent, I don't even know if accuracy is as important as consistency. If all of the libraries are using the same methodology, then more or less we should be getting some pretty helpful results, I think. But I would agree. I mean, I usually use a speed test like fast.com for certain things, but I might use the MLab test for other reasons. But I think as long as all the speed tests use the same, then we're probably in pretty good shape. Disagreement?
Yeah, I disagree. Yeah. I mean, libraries are giving out a massive Wi-Fi network, and different users in different part of the library have very different speeds just because of bookshelves in the middle. And I mean, it's a very confusing wireless environment. So that all contributes to the speed test. So
I'm confused what you're saying.
I think that if you did a library speed test all throughout the day, you'd see a wide range of speeds shown on the speed test. So, yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's the benefit of having a device that would do like an hourly test.
Right.
I mean, you could certainly be more fine grained in your reporting.
Right.
Anything else on this? I want to move on to the next thing.
If you want to move on, we're here. Keep moving. Keep on moving.
I don't know. I don't know. She's a negative Nelly. So
I was just down in San Antonio. San Antonio is one of the places where they've made some plans and done some things to try to improve internet access. I think there's a movement that my colleague Deanne has been involved in, San Diego. Wow. The Digital Equity San Antonio Digital Inclusion. Okay. It's called DIASA. Digital Inclusion Network. Boy, I'm just embarrassing myself.
Where's Jordan and Rye?
Yeah, we need them around. My brain
is. This might be the end of the show. He's just going to do this for 20 more minutes.
Thanks, everyone. Tip your waiters. So anyway, there's a Digital Equity Coalition. They convinced the community to put the local government to put money into this, and then AT&T ended up getting the money. One of those things that's like a little bit frustrating, but they still have people who are working to have a more sensible, actual good approach. I feel like when I look around, I talk constantly about Cleveland. I talk about Newark in terms of places that have either a nonprofit in the case of Cleveland, but also city support from the local government of Cleveland. Newark, the city itself, is making smart investments. We talked about New York City, where they had a good plan and then they abandoned it to just throw money at the cable company. I think even the people that are doing the throwing right now are starting to realize that this is a really terrible idea. And so I'm curious from, in particular, Doug and Kim, because Travis will just talk about how Minneapolis leaders want to criticize and never do anything to actually try to help on the problem. But in cities around the country, do you see most metros actually having a plan to try to deal with things as they finally realize that BEAD is not going to help them?
I'm seeing smaller cities doing this. I mean, and I'm saying cities of 100,000. They are going, no one else is going to help us. A third of our population can't afford the internet. We got to find a solution here. So I see those cities actively working towards something. The bigger the city gets, the harder it is for them to do something. So I'm not that there aren't a few that are doing it, but the big cities tend to study it and then never do anything to study. So,
well, that's where,
and
so, I mean, I did just do an interview that'll come up in a few weeks on the Community Broadband Bits podcast with Los Angeles, the County of Los Angeles, which is being involved in working with some of the cities in the Los Angeles County region on getting connectivity to 275,000 households. And they're one of the rare exceptions. And so we know that it can happen in very large populous regions. But like Doug says, Kim, I just don't see it happening in most of these places.
I think what's happening from my perspective, I think there are some big cities, but I think they're doing it way behind closed doors right now. Because if they ever came out and said anything right now, they're going to get attacked. They know that. They are aware of that. So in order to make anything happen, they have to do everything behind closed doors and have everything buttoned up before they come out to the press, because they understand that they're going to get hit. They understand that people are going to attack, because these big incumbents aren't going to let these big metros go without a heck of a fight.
I think that's true in some cases, but I've also, Doug, you get calls from people sometimes, I'm sure. I get calls and emails, and there's one city in particular that's a rather large city. I've had 3 different groups reach out to me over the past 3 years, and each time they basically said, look, like, we're trying to figure out how we can make a difference here, to which I will generally say, my perception is you have no support from the mayor, very limited support from city council. Is that your perception? And they're like, yes, what can we do? And I was like, very little, because there's just not prioritized by the leadership.
Well, you have to have political will at the onset, and it can't be elected political will that changes, because these broadband plans for cities take years and years, as Doug knows more than I do. So by the time you get to that point where you have actually something to be executed on, then a new elected body comes in, and you have to have the stability of somebody else who's not an elected official making these decisions.
One of the things that I would just go back to, and I'll throw Travis up here, is the discussion 3 weeks ago in our last show, where there was an argument from Travis, you as well as Robert, that low interest loans would really make a real difference in allowing you to build out to areas that were, historically poorly connected.
Yeah, I mean, like we've talked about, adding 5-6% onto the interest is you got to be really specific on where you're going to go. I mean, you just do the return has to be there.
So, but Travis, I mean, have you, what I want to sort of get to, and people should go back and watch the show with the discussion, but my sense is that sometimes I think the cities don't realize that it is not as hard as they might think to try to resolve some of this.
Well, but first you got to ask yourself, where is the priority? Is this in the top 100 of priorities that they have on a day-to-day basis? I just really don't know, and, what other limitations do they have, working with private companies as well? There's challenges there, especially if you've got 2 or 3 other players in the market. It's just kind of the reality, but the math is the math when it comes to these things. And these networks are getting more expensive every day to deploy.
Well, I think, Travis, you're right? But so say a city 3 years ago based all their assumptions on the old interest rates of 3 years ago, and then they got to the point where they actually had a bond, and then or whatnot, and get the financing, and where they are today. Where do they go though, Chris? Like, even if they have a plan, where do they go? They'd all die.
Yeah.
Well, I think this gets back to the political will, and that's where that's where we just keep on coming back to, is whether or not there's political will, and often there's not, because there are other priorities, and other priorities generally don't have the kind of organized, powerful opposition that the cable and telephone companies can present, I think.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, if your plan was at 5% and now you're paying 9.5%. The math just simply doesn't work. And if your labor costs have gone up, 25%, everything's up 25%. So the math is just hard. It's hard to make work. I mean, it's the reality.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. So, I mean, we're at historic unemployment, Travis. We started this show, actually. I'm trying to remember exactly what things were, but I think we started the show early enough that at that point we were still talking about a significant amount of unemployment. Maybe 5-6%. And now we're at a place in which you can't find people that aren't in the workforce really that are able to do this kind of work. And so I am curious, Travis, as you look at this, do you just forecast labor costs to continue to rise? Because neither political party seems to be about to, I shouldn't say that way. The dynamics in DC, which I would blame on one political party, seem to make it unlikely that we would have a new program to increase immigration. And absent immigration, I'm not sure how we get a whole bunch of new, like 18 to 35-year-olds into the labor force.
So, and again, I don't know how Doug's financial models are, but Doug said something early on in this series we've been doing that is holding true. The day of $100 broadband is coming, and it's being driven by costs. And one of them is labor. You can find people to work. You just have to pay them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what it comes down to. That's why if you go buy a meal at McDonald's now, it's almost $20. I mean, it's the same problem in all. It's the same problem universally. It's why restaurants aren't open on Sunday and Monday.
If this was This Week in Fast Food, we'd be talking about the new Taco Bell deals to compete with McDonald's new deals, because there's new value meals that are lower price again, which are just the old price we used to pay.
But
we now know who watches Taco Bell commercials is what we're
Taco Bell. Go ahead, Travis.
But is nobody worried about what's really going on right now?
I'm worried about so many
what
things.
Is it?
Where's
so
Ruben?
What is it?
Where is Ruben? This is what I mean. Is this the first episode he's missed?
It's been a while.
Yeah.
I think
Doug, you want to help us? You want to help us wrap this up?
We have to shut it down without Ruben. I'm sorry. No, I mean, Travis nailed it. The costs are just so high that, that's making it so much harder for cities to do anything. I mean, these things are hard to do when things were cheap. I mean, these plans didn't work. I mean, they were usually trying to solve low-income neighborhoods where there's no revenue. That's the problem. So,
well, and another problem is, what if you bonded right before these price increases and you had anticipated take rates and how much you would build across? Those projects a lot of them are at risk because of something that was out of their control, and that they got cheap money, but cheap money doesn't come with cheap labor or cheap equipment, which was those prices rose extreme after all this happened. It's going to be interesting to see if those projects survive.
And ACP is the final nail in the coffin, because you could have brought broadband to a low-income housing project, signed everybody up, and there's your revenue stream, and now you don't have that. So it's a real problem. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm not too worried about those projects, Kim. One of the things that I believe, and I mean, this might be something that Travis can laugh at and you could be horrified at, Kim, but the more expensive things get, I think the more it is in the wheelhouse of local governments. Broadband is still the cheapest thing to build. It is cheaper than sidewalks. It is cheaper than water systems. It's cheaper than electricity for cities that do electricity. I mean, to give you just a comparison, which is not perfect because of various regulations, but a certain someone who works at ILSR has a new cabin, who's not me, and connecting that cabin to electricity is $9,000. Connecting that cabin to internet access is maybe $100 if this person doesn't take a contract. And I think that's actually indicative of the fact that hooking someone up to electricity is not that great of a delta of $9,000, but it is seriously more expensive to hook people up to electricity and then to deal with that demand on the grid than it is to extend fiber networks. So even if fiber networks doubled in price, it would be the cheapest infrastructure cities could build.
But no. I disagree with this. I agree that it's expensive, but you have one electric provider. In broadband, you can't raise those prices to $9,000 necessarily when you have Starlink that they can get or whatnot.
Right.
You have to stay competitive. But what I'm saying is, yes, city government should be in charge of this, but these private equity and all these people who loan these people money don't care about that. They care about getting their returns. And what are those returns going to really look like? And I think that's the crux of the problem. If it's like bonding from government agencies and they have some revenue stream to cover it, I don't think it's as big of a problem as all the private money that's out there and what's going to happen to it.
I do like the idea of Ryan's going to reverse broadband over power lines to power over broadband lines. So pretty good.
Well, yeah, Chris, there is a few flaws in your strategy.
More than a few. I'm willing to grant that. Go ahead, Travis, and spell them out.
So first off, the probably I don't know your exact situation with the ILSR employee in their cabin, but copper is far more expensive than fiber. Let's just put it that way. So to run single phase any distance is very expensive.
Right.
And,
this is my point, though. You're reinforcing my point and agreeing with me.
Yeah. So, but that's the equivalent of a service drop with a network that's already built. The problem in a lot of these areas is there's no network. So to build a new network is not necessarily cheaper than resurfacing a road that's already been there, that was purchased with dollars from the 1950s. So see, that's the thing. If there was if all we were dealing with is what cities predominantly deal with, which are service drops for electric, water, sewer, and a few little expansions for growing neighborhoods, you're not overbuilding an entire city with a whole new infrastructure, which is what we're talking about now.
I see Doug concentrating.
Yep.
He actually, that's a charter concentration because Doug froze all of a sudden.
Do you remember that whole podcast I did with my face froze years ago? Yeah. That's basically what I feel like is happening to Doug.
I just assumed that was right after Botox.
And
Go ahead.
Kim, can you imagine for a minute having a conversation where you get 100% of the market with the service you're providing?
Exactly.
I mean, it blows the math out of the water.
Right. No, my point is, and you're right about those dynamics, and those are things one has to consider. My point is more that the more expensive it gets to build a fiber network, A, first of all, it's still cheaper than other infrastructure, but B, cities can do it. Cities can find ways of doing it. They do have access to cheaper capital, and it's not an accident they have access to cheaper capital. We deliberately built a system in which they have access to cheaper capital because cities are making investments for general infrastructure, right? It's not like they're building an Apple iPod factory or something like that. They're not like they're building something that all other business and residential needs of the community will take advantage of. So we make it easier to finance that basic infrastructure. And so, like, I just don't panic at the threat of it being expensive to build these networks. It would be nice if it wasn't.
Yeah, but the thing is, the cities are still not spending $2 million to get to that one outlier. And that's what you're kind of talking about here.
No,
cities
I'm not.
might eventually get there.
I'm talking about the 20 to 30% of people who are been left behind. That Comcast and AT&T, will offer some sort of low income program that hits 20% of the population and call it job done. When there's tens of thousands of people in a major metro area who are not connected, who would benefit from telehealth benefits, from educational and economic opportunities and things like that, but aren't a part of the market solution. Doug, did you mute yourself? Because you've been quiet longer than you usually are.
Yeah. No, the trouble with cities is everyone from the top down lies about the situation. I just looked at a neighborhood in LA, and you just go to Google Earth, you look down the street, there's a power line, there's a ton of cable company drops to the left side of the street, and then there's zero to the right side of the street. They simply didn't connect anybody. There's all sorts of houses on both sides. They connected nobody. But then if you go to the FCC map, these neighborhoods are all served, right? They have simply left large numbers of people completely behind. I don't know if you've run into that, Travis, but I find it everywhere I look. So,
well,
cities could fix that. The trouble is, if you tried to fix that, Comcast could go there in a week and put the darn drops in finally for cheap, and it wouldn't take a lot of money to fix it, but they don't. So, yeah.
But this overlays into your article this morning, because you'll run into situations where the county won't let you build on both sides of the street, right? Yeah. They have an ordinance against that. So what do you have? You have one side that has service, the other that doesn't.
There's something going on, right?
There's something to figure this all out. You've got to have a PhD in deep research, because every street is different.
Right. All right, we've wandered around a bit. Kim, any last comments? All right,
Can I have one final? I think it's a really good segue, because I think we need to introduce something new in this show. This once in a lifetime broadband infrastructure thing you've been talking about for 97 episodes.
You haven't heard that from me, I can tell you that.
How many people has it hooked up so far? We should keep a tally.
The BEAD, so BEAD has hooked 0 people up, but the rescue plan, the rescue plan is probably responsible for more than 1 million new hookups, I would guess.
Okay. No. But can we go back to how much of the BEAD money is going to go to the big incumbents, Chris? We just want to know. We have to get an update of where you are right now.
We should do an update every few shows.
Yes. He's hiding under his desk.
Oh, hold on a second. We actually have something to do with this. I think that the answer is obviously. Sorry, I don't know what happened. I'm just learning how to run the show today.
Okay, so we're at 0 right now. I just want to make sure we're keeping tally here. Okay.
Right. No, Travis, I mean, that's by design, right? Like it's $42.5 billion. They're trying to figure out how to get it out there.
Successful if that's the design. Yeah.
Okay, we're going on to something that we actually know even less about: Starlink, and so.
But no. We need to stop this. I think Travis is right. Travis said 99% was going to the big incumbents, and
no.
Travis...
I will not get on board 99%. I'm going to stick with. I'm sticking with 75% right now. That's where I'm sitting. 75% will go to the big incumbents as defined by, let's say, the biggest 10 cable companies and biggest 10 telephone companies.
So we need the definition of incumbent, Doug. That would be.
We got stuck on this before.
No, it would have to be the dominant player in the industry, the cable or the telco in the area. I would say that's the incumbent.
But in a lot of places, that's a very tiny company, Travis. So,
yeah. But remember, Chris started out in episode 32 how this was going to spur all this great competition, and by episode 97 he's ducking down.
With that kind of memory, Travis, you could run for president.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that, huh?
I'm going to and if someone has way too much time on their hands and they want to go back and chart the differences of my opinions of how much money was going to be spent well versus not spent well, I also would be interested in seeing that. All right, so Starlink is something that I feel like I've generally defended, and at the same time, I am concerned with some of the issues. I mean, obviously I've always I'm not as concerned as some people with the idea of like massive space debris, because this stuff is in a low enough orbit. It's not as horrible as if we had space debris in higher orbits. Wouldn't be great, but at the same time, these satellites are in orbits in which they decay over like 4 or 5 years. However, when you put tens of thousands of objects up there to decay, it turns out one of the problems, and I'm going to guess we'll find other ones, is that aluminum, injecting it into the upper atmosphere like this, has really bad effects on the ozone layer. Now, this is still, I think, early science. Carl Bodie reported this out, and I thought it was interesting because I feel like it's one of those things where we had an assumption that if you burn up a few things every now and then in the atmosphere, it's not that big of a deal. And then it was like, what if we burned up stuff every day? And it turns out it's not good. Doug?
Yeah, that article makes sense. I mean, and it's not just going to be 40,000 from Starlink. We're going to have 100,000 satellites. The Chinese are putting them up. Amazon's getting ready to put up a large number. They're putting up a bunch from a European consortium. The sky is going to be full of these things. So it's going to be a lot of objects. So, I mean, it's just not good to put that many things in such a small area. It's going to cause problems. So what do they do here? They'll outlaw aluminum as part of the components. It'll turn out there's another problem then. So,
yeah, I'll just say this, which is that it's not really a small area. I mean, it is a small area above Earth. However, we've got like 1 billion automobiles on Earth, and we're talking about hundreds of thousands of objects in space over actually a larger area. But I also just want for the perspective there. But Kim, you look like you were leaning forward.
No, I was just excited because Ruben's here. We know, like Travis, we see Ruben.
Ruben's
back.
Hey, he's late.
Yes.
This is the problem we knew coming. We knew that was coming with Starlink. If nobody thought that there was going to be a conversation about space trash, I think they were delusional. We knew this was going to happen. What do we do to solve it? Depends on, do you want Starlink to cover the entire nation or really just cover where it's needed? I think that's more of a conversation of what do we need?
I don't think that works, Kim. I don't think I suppose you could have just orbits that go around certain areas, but by its nation, I think it's kind of a global thing.
Yeah, but we don't have to have enough satellites to cover and to like really saturate the whole nation, right? It's more of, do you use some for more emergency purposes versus that we're using it for everyday use in some areas? I think that's more of the question.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one way of doing with that would just be to like the current amount of satellites they have more or less meets demand, and if we stuck it there rather than increasing it by a factor of 10, then that might be good enough. I don't know, Travis.
Yeah, like why? Well, I was going to say this. Why would let me in Salt Lake City, who has like 5 other options, do Starlink where it might impact better in some rural areas?
Well, but we have a lot of new uses for these too. They're going to start serving regular cell phones from satellites very soon, and that's going to put a ton of satellites up. So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm just not really educated enough. It just seems to me that, you know, the amount of trash that would be up there and the amount that gets burned up is pretty insignificant. But I have no basis of that other than, I mean, even if we had 100,000 up there, how many are deorbiting per year? You know,
20%.
Well,
20%.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're talking about, you know, I do think you're talking about like, you know, 10, 20 a day. I mean, I'd have to do the math more carefully, but
something the size of your couch, basically.
Right. But I mean, I think that's the question is like, this is a pretty specific set of chemistry that's up there, and we're altering it fairly significantly. I mean, you know, just the big hair of the 80s, you know, resulted in everyone getting sunburned in the 90s. And I think one could say, well, how much does hairspray do? Well,
okay, so 55 couch-sized things a day coming out of orbit on the, you know, we live on a very large planet, so I guess I don't know. You know, I mean,
well, the issue here, Travis, is they say that the microscopic particles that leak off of it on the way down stay up there for 20 years, and that's the problem.
Well, okay, now that I was unaware of, and is that really true though? You would think that the weight would bring it? I have no idea.
I mean, microscopic. These are. It's definitive because Carl Bodie said it. We don't. Okay, that's correct.
Yeah, I mean, this is a sort of thing where I think it's one of those things that like these are initial studies. This will result in more people studying it more carefully, and we'll know more soon. Go ahead, Kim.
Wait a minute.
I have a solution. Can we make green satellites?
Like make them out of like
organic satellites. Yeah,
we could make them. We could make them out of fake meat. Yeah.
That would help some of those stocks that I bought when I thought fake meat was going to rule the world. I'm still excited about it at some point.
Well, nobody wants to eat fake meat, so this is a good use for it. So,
all right.
Okay, we figured out Chris. Chris cannot buy stocks. First fake meat, second Lumen was your stock purchases this year.
So I guess following that logic though, is it more? Does it cause more problems by burning all the fuel to launch the satellites?
Yeah, that's also an issue, frankly.
Or
I mean, that's a big issue.
Or them deorbiting, or to Ryan's point, I think a worse situation would be as if they stayed in orbit. That would be a terrible situation.
That would be bad.
Yeah.
Now remember that the Japanese were going to build a space elevator, so we didn't have to launch, but that never has ever happened.
Yeah.
So.
It actually would be really helpful if they did, though, or if someone did. The economics of it are actually really quite wonderful once it's done. As long as, I mean, if for those who are fans of the Red Mars, Green Mars, Blue Mars series, know deorbiting a space elevator though is quite damaging. It turns out, at least in fiction. So I'm going to move on to Sony versus Cox. This is something that Doug wrote about, and I didn't notice because I tried to avoid giving him too much credit for things. But then I've got 2 different people reaching out to me this week to be like, oh my God, ILSR, and others who are concerned about small ISPs need to step up and be involved because record labels, and this is a quote from Doug, record labels are insisting Cox should have permanently disconnected any customer who engaged in repeated copyright infringement. And so it used to be that basically the ISP would only be found to be in the wrong and potential for being punished if they had basically refused to take action when someone was flagrantly violating the law. And it seems like now an ISP could be held and could be punished and required to take action if even if they're not even aware of a customer taking action. So, which is to say that if Kim is like stealing the occasional song, her Milli Vanilli tracks that she's downloading, then illegally, and the ISP doesn't notice it, is that a problem for the ISP? And currently, with the decision of the Fourth Circuit, an ISP could get in trouble if Kim is downloading stuff illegally and she's not cut off. Basically, Doug, did I make too much of a hash of that?
No, what it used to happen was the ISPs would actually go after Kim. And then what they normally did was they sued her, and then they settled by Kim giving them $1,000. Because the companies doing this aren't actually the record labels. They're a bunch of vultures who work for the record labels for the purpose of generating this revenue. So it's a whole brand new industry that grew up for copyright infringement. But now just imagine that. What teenage boy doesn't steal something off the internet? Games, looking at sports events, wrestling, whatever. And of course they do. And are you going to lose your home's ISP permanently because your kid did something like that?
Well,
but where is the line? Where's the line? Like, if you stole water to make meth, where's the line? Like, are you going to say that the water person needs to cut them off? Where's the line of the accountability of it?
That's what I came to, Kim. I had the exact same thought, and I want to prop Doug up here, but it always comes back to me, like, this is not a new problem. We've had telegraph communication was used to facilitate crime. You could make plans for crime on a telephone line, and we had to wrestle with how to deal with that as a legal system, and ultimately decided that we didn't want the telephone company listening in on everyone's conversation to try and figure out who was doing crime.
No, and Congress could fix this. There's that famous saying again. That's easy. Congress could fix this with one short little 2-paragraph law. So
who could fix it faster, FCC or Congress? Doug, what is your vote?
The FCC is not going to be allowed to do anything pretty soon. So that's
if say they could, which one could do it faster? Do you think?
I'm not sure that the FCC could.
The FCC. This is not their bailiwick. I don't think so.
Yeah.
I mean, Travis, how do you feel hearing about this? I mean, how much do you want to try to figure out which of your customers could be violating the law?
Well, yeah, I'm looking for another job. So my theory is here: shut off their power to the house. That'll solve it all.
Right. So if they're caught, not only that, and Doug makes this point also, but it's not even a matter of if they're caught. We're presuming, what about a guilty person? How about the person that's accused incorrectly? As you know, when you look at the same dynamic arrests in the debt, wow, I don't even know where that came from. The same dynamic presents itself in the debt markets, right? Where vultures can buy debt. And then they can go after the person, and they're constantly going after the wrong person because these companies are not incented to always get it right. They are incented for a volume approach to try to figure out how to make money. And so we're going to see if this is not corrected by the Supreme Court, we're going to see potentially a lot of people being kicked off the internet through no fault of their own because they've just been accused by a company that's bad at its job of being a vulture.
Yes, I mean, you could lose your internet because it was a different Chris Mitchell. Yes.
Yeah. There's a Chris Mitchell that's a pedophile. So that guy, I bet he downloads illegal stuff all the time.
Oh, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, first of all, this is digressing.
Sorry.
I just want to tell that.
You ever get those Google alerts for your name? That's what happened to me. I'm not tracking this guy.
I was going to say that Ruben is correct. I do pay for my 80s and 90s music. Me and the Backstreet Boys are rocking out on a good given Friday. So yes, I do. I'm that person. I'm a rule follower. But yeah, it's going to, where does capitalism end and consumer protectionism start? And I think that is what we have to define, because you could this can go down a huge rabbit hole if this continues to happen or whatever.
And Cox was shocked that they lost this, because in the past they would have never lost this lawsuit. But the first lawsuit, they also got a $1 billion penalty, which luckily the next court up actually got rid of the penalty. But I mean, this is crazy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, this is the sort of thing that, oddly enough, I actually think that if the Supreme Court doesn't act, and maybe even before the Supreme Court act, you could imagine Congress actually slipping this in somewhere to deal with it, because this is not one of those things where like there's some ISPs who have a differing opinion. This is ludicrous. Like this is just not the way a common carrier works.
This also threatens Comcast and AT&T and Charter. They can get Congress to do something. So yes,
yeah. So we'll be keeping an eye on it, but like Travis had said, I mean, we don't cut off people's power when someone in the family engages in theft, right? Like you can imagine that, right? Like we're having guests over tonight, but just so you know, we have no electricity because little Ricky stole a candy bar and brought it home.
Yeah, so somebody downloads a song, they can still play it, so we have to cut off their power so they can't play it.
Right.
You know?
Forever.
Yeah, forever. I mean,
Yes.
Also,
There's things called batteries, Travis.
confiscating the generators and the batteries. That's next.
no, all batteries have to go. No, you're not allowed to have solar panels anymore. I mean, you did a serious crime.
Yeah.
And I never trusted little Ricky anyways.
I know. Send him to the system. Yeah,
Travis,
life in prison.
Travis, you went to Kansas City. How was the barbecue?
You know, very, very good, actually. I enjoyed Kansas City, but my, was it hot. You know, I'm a polar bear from Minnesota. You don't go to Kansas City in the summer with the humidity. It was great. You know, met a lot of nice folks, and I can't even believe it. Somebody said they watched this podcast. So that was quite
Yeah, probably by mistake, right? Did they watch it for more
Yeah.
than 5 minutes?
It was all about Kim again. I don't know. This seems to be a universal thing I always hear. Yeah. I'm like, well, you know, Doug, Chris, and I are on it too. And they're like, who? Yeah.
No, but isn't it amazing when you go out in public, people have watched this podcast and you're like, whoa, I didn't even know people watched this.
No, I was like, what? They go, do you really know Kim McKinley? And I'm like, yeah, I have her phone number right here. And there's a 2% chance. So.
The next thing that people ask me is, hey, does Doug whispering?
Yeah. But I do want to give a shout out to Jim Troutman. I mean, he hooked us up. We were having kind of a lunch, and he hooked us up with a really good piece of information. So shout out, Jim.
Are you going to share that here or in the after show when no one can hear it?
Oh, no. He turned us on to a Microsoft content caching platform that I was not aware of. Surprised it was buried deep into the bowels of Microsoft's website, and he pointed us there. And so we were able to onboard a caching platform. So now all the patches, service releases, Xbox content are served locally, not over the interwebs. So it's an improvement for our customers. So thank you, Mr.
And a money saver. Yes,
everyone wins. Yes, so that was a very good, but no, good show. A lot of good people. It's a place you can see a lot of Birkenstocks and long hair, and I do like those are my people. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just trying to figure out exactly how many of those people are your people.
They're all my people. They're all nerds. I love them. Yeah.
They're network nerds. Yes.
The people that I associate with Birkenstocks are not the ones that would be going to a peering conference. Is what I'm trying to deal with.
Those are at your peace camp. No, these are different people. Yes. No. Yeah.
Oh, you brought up a peace camp reference. Wasn't there like on one campus?
About every 10th episode, we got to launch the old. We got to launch the old peace camp across the bow.
I have no
Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson has not been brought up yet.
Yeah.
Well, until now, yeah.
We have a vote that Jim is awesome. Jim used to be a watcher of the show and jump in every now and then, I think. But I guess I don't know. We must have alienated him, or he's just actually doing his job and things.
He doesn't like Woodrow Wilson. I think he just
he doesn't like what?
Woodrow Wilson.
Oh yeah. Well, not everyone can appreciate him, I guess. Wow, I should have just kept quiet and moved on to the next thing. I used up all my charm yesterday in San Antonio, so I'm just gonna blame
all of his charm, singular.
Yesterday, I introduced myself as being from the Institute for Local Self-Science. So it's been a week. Kansas City, any last thoughts on peering? We do want to do a show still that goes more in depth on peering. One of the things that I heard recently in talking about peering, which I think is most likely accurate, is that the United States is further ahead in peering than almost anywhere else, and boy, do we have a long way to go to make it good.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And
both true. Yes.
There's an opportunity there. I'm hoping to talk Jay into bringing the summit to Minneapolis next year, and if he does, maybe everyone will come into town. Chicken wings are on me, so whoever wants to come hang out with.
Oh, in that case, I'll pay for them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Are they the big chicken wings? Those things were big, Travis. Those things are
those
big.
Those are
you
turkey
get the
wings.
double?
Yeah. Those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, well, it's interesting. Some of we can get into some real deep IPv6 conversations. Those are always real fun. And I always I get stuck in the front row, so I can't sneak out. So I mean,
let's deal with that real quick, right? IPv6. I feel like the idea that every machine should be addressable by every other machine is scary, given the current state of security. Not a huge fan. I don't necessarily have a problem with natting network address translation. Other quick thoughts?
Well, there's still firewalls in the mix, so it's just yeah. Oh, hey, there's Jay. Yeah, so everyone root for Minneapolis next year.
Or I would just like to, I don't know what it is, but like June events. I feel like there's an event in the Chicago area for years I could never get to and just never worked out. And then I would love to go to Kansas City for this event. I just have not had the time free when the event was. Anyway, firewalls are good. But what's the big argument for IPv6?
Oh, we're just out of address space on IPv4.
Sure. Yeah. So you don't want to muddle through. Makes sense.
No, I mean, it's cool. It works. It's fun. It's complicated. People don't understand it, but it solves the problem.
Would Jim come on to talk about MooseNet? I'd be interested to bring Jim on.
Sure.
So if someone wants to pitch him on MooseNet, then yeah. But we're going to move on to Colorado because this is something that I found really interesting. And then when I actually read the law, I found it still more interesting. So I found out about it because once again, Carl Bodie, actually writing for the Institute for Local Self-Reliance this time, had covered this law that they passed in Colorado. We have seen similar laws to encourage choice in both San Francisco and then in Oakland, and those were based on state law in California, and so it's not immediately something you could do in St. Paul or in another city. But here the state has passed the law, and it'll be interesting to see what happens next. Here's a link to the actual law itself. But what I thought was interesting is and I'm curious to see how this actually develops. But Travis, if you wanted to get into a place, you would write to the landlord. And if you wrote to them 2 times, in sort of normal, and had that documented over the course of a month, and they did not get back to you, apparently you could just go in.
That's what the law says. You could just show up with your text and start installing.
Oh, yeah. That's a really good way to start your relationship with that landlord.
Yeah, it is.
So that's what I expected you to say, Travis. And so I feel like it's easy to point out like all the ways that this could go wrong. And I'm sure it will go wrong in some ways, but to me, it does seem like a good starting place. And hopefully as landlords become more educated about this will lead to them being more responsive, maybe.
Well, the way this is going to go wrong is there's been
sorry. Good response, Travis.
Oh yeah, that's exactly where this is heading. Sorry, Doug, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, there's been attempts to do this for the last 20 years. The upper courts always killed these ideas for property rights. The landlords have the right of their stuff inside their own building. It's always going to get killed eventually up the stream on the courts.
So you think this will be killed by the Colorado courts?
Or
Kim
the
says yes.
courts. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, landlords have property rights and courts love property rights, especially in the West. Colorado's a big property rights state. So that always is the winning issue.
Yeah, they keep trying to regulate this instead of having relationships and talking through something, because that's the problem. You cannot regulate and pass laws and think that this is going to work. And they keep trying to do this all over the place. And I don't think it's going to ever pass because Doug is absolutely right. A building owner has rights too. And you just can't let people just go through your building willy-nilly all the time.
And Travis said it right. Why would you want to go in a building where the guy doesn't want you in his building? It's never going to work out for you.
Well,
So,
okay. I'm just gonna I'm gonna jump in and defend this then. If y'all are gonna be like, oh, you know, we're just want the bad things to happen. It's been 25 years. It's been 25 years of building relationships, right? You've got all these landlords who now you're gonna be putting me off my game because you're like building this up too much. I'm freaking out a little bit, just a little bit. But like it's been 25, 30, 40 years, depending on how far you want to go back for the technology, where buildings have been locked down. And if we want to have choice for the, what is like 40% of people that live in MDUs or something like that, then you got to take action. You got to try different things. And I'll be curious to see if the courts strike it down. I agree with Travis. You should build relationships, but like you have all these places. It's not like you're like, oh, you're going to sour with the landlord. You're going from not having a relationship with some faceless corporate entity or some like punk that inherited a building from his dad and lives in freaking Miami, and it's a building in Boston, and you can't get a hold of him anyway. You're probably going to go in there and install your gear, and they're not even going to freaking notice because they're so negligent with it. There's all kinds of different cases in which I feel like this could actually result in positive ways, although there's certainly other areas where it might not. But building relationships is great, but it's been like 30 or 40 years of like trying to build relationships with these people and them not wanting to open up the building.
But who's liable if they come in and just install the crappy equipment and destroy
There's a few
the building?
pages on that.
It says the ISP is liable. The ISP is liable. Yeah.
Yeah, but how do you prove it, right? Are they really like, does everybody do a walkthrough before of how it looks and then afterwards of how it looks? I mean, that's how it should be done. But is that being
it actually says the ISP can install any way he wants as long as it meets his interpretation of the aesthetics of the building. Whatever the heck that means.
Oh boy.
He just took the wind out of my sail. That's where I was. Okay, so 30 or 40 years. So we were trying to sell dial-up back in these buildings back in the day.
No, cable
television.
Television.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, Jim
It was
Ballard
back in the Woodrow Wilson administration, Travis. It was back in the
not that far. No, this is living memory. Marco Island and Comcast and Jim Ballard, one of his great stories about the litigation where Comcast was trying to lock that building down. And I'm thinking that's 25 years ago, but that was not new at that point.
So just have a superior product installed in the building next door, and the people will move to your product, which will force building A to install it, and wash, rinse, repeat.
Why would that happen next year if it hasn't happened for the previous 20?
What's been happening for us for 14 years? That's how we got 75,000 units wired. It wasn't just because we walked in with some governors of Minnesota signature saying, Dad said we could come. No, we walked in and said, hi, we would like to provide a very attractive product that your tenants would like to have, and we'd like to work together to make it happen. So
Travis, people do not tune into this show for you to tell the world how wrong I am.
No, but I'm about to tell you how wrong you are again. 14 years ago, even like 15, 30 years ago, nobody cared about internet as much as they do today. People move into some of these apartments, and that's one of their first questions. So they are going to get less take right.
It is their first question.
If they don't offer it.
What do you have for internet? Yeah.
Doug, you want to pile on?
No, I'm actually enjoying just watching this.
I think these are good points, and these are some good dynamics, but at the same time, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, well, like show after show we bemoan how like the cable companies and the big telephone companies are able to lock up these buildings to prevent competition, and we have a state that's trying to actually do something for it, and we're gonna be like, they're probably gonna fail. It's a little too much like the people at sitting on the bar stools who are always right, who are never actually doing anything, which doesn't actually describe the three of you, unfortunately. But nonetheless, like it just seems to me that like it's easy to point out all the ways in which trying to pass one law to address what we're going to guess like is probably like 100,000 buildings in Colorado it's going to be challenging. It's not going to work everywhere, but I feel like it is a good idea to allow for some of these things where there's a plain set of rules as to who is responsible. The building owners get compensated. There's a number of points for entree. And if this results in building owners being a little bit more willing to negotiate, then I think it's a big win. Travis is shaking his head because he doesn't think that's going to happen. Fair enough.
No. And you know what? I will be happy sometime to tell you how to get buildings to move. So, but maybe episode 98, I'll tell you what the secret is. And it isn't a letter from the governor saying that we can come in and drill holes in your building. Whoever in Colorado tries this, I wish you luck, but you'd be better off just burning your cash because it's not for you.
I mean, so I'll just say empirically that like one of the people behind this effort in San Francisco was Sonic, right? And we've had Dane Jasper on the show before. When I asked Dane, how did this go? He said for 80% of the buildings, it's made it a lot easier. And so, like, I mean, I understand, Travis, that like walking in there with a letter from the mayor that everyone loves to say, you got to let me in. It doesn't sound like, but it's working and my understanding is in Oakland and San Francisco, not in every case, but in many cases.
I think that Dane has a product that he's offering incredible speeds at very low prices, and he's willing to go into these buildings and offer that, and he has a track record. I think that using Sonic is not necessarily what most ISPs really do. But I mean, I do agree that Dane and Sonic have done a great job of connecting these MDUs. But what I was going to say is Ryan and Juan and Ruben's comments were cracking me up. Earlier that first of all, Ruben does tune in for our BS, and then that you're in full dictator mode by Juan. I appreciate those two comments.
So I mean, I think there needs to be a balance, but I will say like we decided to screw property rights to make sure people could put satellite dishes on their apartment buildings, and we were right to do so. None of this stuff is absolute. There are all kinds of ways in which we have to balance the rights of a tenant against the rights of a property owner. And I'm not going to go back to my high school days of Pierre Proudhon and say property is theft. However, I think that the balance is not well struck today, and I'm open to experiments to try to change it. Go ahead, Doug.
No, I'm just trying to wonder what the hell you were doing in high school.
reading French
That's what I was
anarchists.
wondering.
How was that Proudhon? I got to Google Pierre Proudhon.
Proudhon, I think is, I don't know. I'm not French, but French anarchists had big concerns about property. Also, did you ever look up salience, Travis, from our text conversation?
No. Yeah, Chris sends me these thesaurus words that I have to Google what they mean half the time. Yeah. So it's nice to have a fancy friend. That's, you learn a lot,
I do think that sometimes I get texts from Travis and he's like hanging out with like 3 other big business owners, and at a bar, and he's like, watch this.
No. I'm
going to put a quarter in Chris. Wait till you see what he says.
God, he's the smartest guy I know. He'll come up with some big word. We don't know what it means. We're just 3 hillbillies from South Minneapolis. So.
All right. Last topic, which we can always come back to, but I've been wanting to do this for a while. It's 2024. Travis is experimenting with XGS PON, and the question is, what would lead you to go with Active Ethernet or XGS PON today, and maybe a little bit of a contrast for Travis, you're obviously deep into Active Ethernet. You've explained why previously. But is any of that changing as you look at current technology trends and things like that?
For us, it isn't. We just have a fair number of corner cases where we're fiber poor. And when you're fiber poor or fiber light, and we run into a situation where we have 50 single family homes that want service and we have 6 fiber strands, that's what we're dabbling with it in. In all my years of doing this, there's one sentence I've never heard out of an operator, which is, we have way too much fiber in the ground. And that's what I subscribe to. So, I think Active E or PON, you should still, because remember, it's relatively easy to go from Active E to PON. It's almost impossible to go from PON to Active E. So build your network as though you're running Active E, and then you can choose your endpoints as you so see fit. Is my
and I think the perfect metro network has both in it, just like he's doing.
Sorry, Doug. Could you just be a little bit louder as you say that?
Yeah, I agree with him that the perfect mix in a metro is some of each by the neighborhood, just the right thing for the right place. So,
Kim, are you at all seduced by XGS-PON? Are you getting texts from Roger
So
right now freaking out?
No. So I know that our engineering team is looking at XGS-PON, just as we have to. I think it would be negligent not to look at some of these solutions as you continue to build. But as of today, we are still a full Active-E network. But we do it for a little bit different reasons than even Travis does. A lot of ours is because we are a government-owned agency. So if any ISP wants to jump on the network, there's concerns from different ISPs, even with PON still. Are they justified? Probably not, but it's still having the Active-E kind of resolves that problem, or those potential questions that bigger carriers would have.
So when I hear this question, the answer that I often want to give is I've never heard anyone saying, and this is I think just a little different from what Travis had said, if only we had chosen the different technology, we wouldn't have gone out of business. So, Doug, I don't know how you react to that.
In the long run, they have very similar costs. It's not really a put you out of business sort of issue. So, yeah.
Yeah, the issue we always had with PON was just the ongoing licensing costs and the also the fact that a lot of these PON vendors they end of life their platforms, so you're constantly doing refreshes. This is the one real advantage of Active-E is a gigabit switch is a gigabit switch, and the life of it is 10 plus years. Where if you're in somebody's PON ecosystem, you're kind of stuck. This is why we got attracted a little bit more to XGS-PON, is it's supposed to be open. And, I had to break out some of my really sophisticated engineering skills to design this thing. And, this is the very first version. So there you go. Yeah. So,
You didn't have any napkins available?
Yeah, no, it was on the back of a page I signed. So, it was...
Are you going to frame that?
That is it. Yeah, we're gonna try it. We actually have it running as of today. We have it running, and it moves bits.
He's not fooling anybody. That was a picture of a robot he had as a child.
Yes, that was my same skills that I developed in the 3rd grade. I'm still using today. Yeah, we
went through this with the Tribal Broadband Bootcamp, where we've learned a lot of lessons. We had one 2 weeks ago now, I want to say, down at Matt's Ranch, where we put in that fiber network. And one of the things we found is that even with a 48 count armored fiber, that if you, which was not me in this case, Travis would know that because it would involve work. But if you were trying to force that into a home through a hole in the wall, and you bent it a bunch and tried to force it really hard, that a lot of those fibers don't work so good after that. So we ended up with a bunch of bad fibers coming out of our main hut effectively. And we are running on the Calix E7 platform, and for a PON to show people how it works. And it was kind of nice because I was like, all right, I just need one fiber and I'll put the splitter somewhere else. Because originally we were going to keep the splitter in that area, but I just moved it down the line to where we were more fiber rich, as Travis says, and we could get everything connected again. So I'll just say that some of the stuff, if you have Calix holding your hand, which I did, which was really nice, it's not that hard to use and set up.
No, I was surprised about 10 minutes to get it going and pass traffic. So once we get over the licensing stuff, which we're working on now, I think we'll roll out our first test environment, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, no, I think, Travis, you've said before that one of your bigger concerns is if you have a bad optic, you're losing 32 or more customers potentially. So, but in this case, it's just still better to do that than to not have them as customers or to have to build get a new fiber path there, right?
Yeah, I mean, not to get too nerdy, it's this or CWDM or DWDM, and I think this is actually a easier solution for the techs and the engineers to understand than doing colors, which we've done in the past. And
for your techs,
for our techs, yes.
And so that's actually the other thing I was curious about, which is that I feel like if something weird happened and you could get XGS-PON at half the price that you would be paying for it, I suspect you would not change your deployment across Minneapolis because of the benefits of having it standardized in the same tech.
Yeah, because what I don't want to have happen is 10 years, we get some new tech that comes out and our whole network is obsolete. I'm a real fan of I mean, like I mentioned before, our model is no different than the original model, like the Ma Bell rolled out, where they built a building in the middle of a neighborhood. They ran twisted pair every which way and hooked. I mean, that ran for 100 years, and that's what we're doing. And is it the cheapest? No, but I think it has the longest legs.
Any last comments from Travis or Kim?
No. I think we're good. Are we going to do some wireless stuff? Because 13G is coming fast, so we should talk about that next episode.
Is it coming fast?
Yes. No.
I mean, last I had checked, I'd seen a story suggesting that. I mean, there's 3 things that 5G was supposed to bring us, right? Lower latency, the slicing, and what's the third one? I forget. Do you remember, Doug? Do you remember that framing?
Capacity, right?
I think more capacity, maybe, but anyway.
Well,
my understanding is that we have not achieved any of those things yet.
No, the other one was connect to multiple cell sites at the same time if you need it. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
We've
So all
lost
that stuff
Travis,
is still in the
folks. We've
future.
lost Travis.
Travis is hunting down Riki.
Sorry, the puppy was squealing.
Kira. Isn't it Kira?
Kira. We got the new mascot here. So
Aw, how old,
Yeah.
Travis?
she's 9 weeks. So I wanted to put her on episode 97. So in another 13 weeks, when she's huge, what do you say?
She'll see her pacing the background.
Yeah, exactly. Howling.
Yeah.
Well, and in 20 weeks, she'll be holding you up for us.
Exactly. Yeah. That would be quite a feat because a horse is not happy when I ride it. So, you know, that's a Shiba Inu.
What kind of dog is it?
This is
Oh.
Dogecoin. Yeah.
I've the only Shiba Inus I've known can get a little bit bitey.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on over, Chris. Come on over.
Yeah, you're going to train her to attack on the command. Well, actually,
Yeah. Yep.
Actually, she's going to be trained on the word Chris.
No. Go get
Oh,
Woodrow.
look at that.
Go get him. So, get Woodrow. So.
All right. Well, Kira, wonderful to meet you. Welcome to the show. Kim, Doug, Travis, thank you so much. We will be back, and I'm going to say about 2 weeks, and we're going to have another fun episode of how do I end this show? Because I can't remember right now. Another fun episode of Connect This.